first theme. And its second part. And its third part, the folk-like motive. And it's now extended. And here is the four-note transition figure. And the second theme, like a patriotic song. Now it's extended. And its four-note motive as a transition. And the third theme, and its bass line, which will later become the melody. The bass line. And all of this based on the four-note motive. And our fourth theme, the somewhat lyrical and chromatic one. And a little Mozartian cadence. Repeated now by the full orchestra. And moving to F minor.
One thing, very small element in there, there's just so much Beethoven put in there, but one for me is very significant, is that mix of a dominant chord has that unsteady leading feeling. It always wants to resolve into the tonic, and Beethoven puts the tonic bass underneath it, and that's that cluster. Those two harmonies are at inherent conflict with each other, because one is supposed to resolve into another. When you put them at the same time as a one vertical, that creates a really clashing sound of the harmony. And that's probably why the contemporaries of Beethoven often pointed out that he had hearing loss, so he probably couldn't really hear that it sounds dirty. But in fact, when it's orchestrated the way Beethoven did and assigned each note in that vertical to a particular instrument, that cluster doesn't sound dirty, it just sounds very dramatic and very tense.
And expansive. And expansive. It feels like
huge.
There's something. What I love about dissonance is not just for the tension. I mean, there is tension, but it's not just so singular in its dimension. I think it's got more to offer than just tension. This whole idea of dissonance, or things that kind of build, it makes us feel enlarged. It inflates the space of the musical sphere. It kind of allows you to feel like there's some kind of journey that you're going on, and you're moving through something until you finally arrived. So I think it's the way he does that is brilliant.
And we have almost arrived now at the central development section. But I should mention another important fact about this symphony. To increase the impact of this finale, Beethoven augments the orchestra by adding a piccolo to the top of the woodwind choir, a contrabassoon to increase the weight at the bottom, and, most tellingly, 3 trombones in the brass section, which add sonority and breadth to the overall effect. They were used in opera and church music, but rarely in concert, and never all 5 of them in one work.
And I wanted also to mention how Beethoven pre-programmed a lot of this. He brings in new instruments, and everything in there, for some people it may be an eye-opening. For me, at least, it was when I first got to study in depth the music composition, how all of the elements are brought in by the composer with a purpose. How purposeful everything the composer writes on the script is. It all comes kind of backwards, comes from the goal, from the purpose, which first set by the story which the composer wants to tell. So it's not an accident that Beethoven brought the trombones and bassoons and all this augmented orchestration, because he gives particular roles for those instruments in bringing out the particular themes. So he assigns the color of the theme, the function of the theme, to particular effect that each instrument can produce. And it does. The effect of it is very emotionally striking. Beethoven is, of course, one of the epic composers.
Yeah, the innovation within orchestration that we talked about and you mentioned isn't, just to summarize, not a innovation based on novelty. It's an innovation based on purpose, like you say, is to elucidate some sort of meaning or breadth or the depth in which he wanted to convey. I like how it's not the first time you hear, 5 trombones or something. You can hear in opera and perhaps in, what did he say, choral music or something of that sort. But hey, all of a sudden, bringing this into the symphony, he must have had a different idea or must have heard it somewhere else. And I want to tie this back to narration and how we always think of in stories when something insignificant is introduced, but later on comes back to serve something really important as something that's just incredible. And I wonder what that is. And I think musically, Beethoven really appreciates that. He takes something very simple, a little structure, a little rhythmic motive, and he puts it everywhere and develops it and makes it something that's inspiring. But as someone who enjoys story, but also it's significant because if you're constantly hearing the same rhythmic motif, it ties the whole piece together.
There is also a report that suggests that Beethoven was using another well-known revolutionary song at this point in the finale, a song composed by Claude Rouget de Lisle, the man who wrote La Marseillaise. I'm not sure. I have a difficult time finding that motive here. But there's something very significant, perhaps, going on in a programmatic, symbolic way when Beethoven takes the formerly lowly bass line, yes, the lowly bass line, the functions down here, and the sort of flighty, dashing upper part, and he exchanges them. Now the lowly, the lower class is perhaps now elevated to the upper class and takes prominence, while the formerly flighty, dashing voice is now assigned a subsidiary role. I don't know. I said I'm not going to go looking for obscure things here, but it's very, very interesting the way Beethoven takes this melody and its bass line and switches their roles. And since groundbreaking events seem to occur at regular intervals in this work, we're headed for another one now. Let's back up to that great passage we just looked at, with the third theme and its bass line repurposed. But we're headed into a grand climax in the dominant key of G. And it's a big one. But listen where it goes. That unexpected series of repeated G's in the violins. Very interesting way to end this imposing passage. Yes? And these repeated G's lead to this. A shadowy recall of the scherzo, the third movement, right in the middle of the finale. Maybe not quite as revolutionary as it seems, since we saw in our minuet episode how Haydn did this same thing in his Symphony number 46 from 1775. Incidentally, I mistakenly said it predated Beethoven's Fifth by 50 years, when it was actually more like 35 years. Still, it's impossible to know if Beethoven was aware of Haydn's number 46. Certainly the general public had never heard such a thing, the third movement reappearing in the middle of the finale. So Beethoven now uses this opportunity to rewrite his scherzo to suit his architectural plan. He locks into the four-note motif, recalling the horn march, and he uses it to gradually build his way out of the scherzo, back into the finale. The clarinets, violas, and horns repeat the motif in G major, the dominant chord, while above the flute, oboe, and bassoon outlined a dominant seventh chord, that is G major, with an F added on top. So we get this. Under which the timpani enter sort of prematurely on the note C, the tonic note, like so, anticipating the resolution of the dominant G to C. And so we get a condensed version of that brilliant transition to the finale that we heard before, the one that Berlioz said drove the audience nuts, which now leads to the finale's recapitulation. So structurally, the recall of the scherzo functions beautifully as an episode in Beethoven's central development section.
I think it's interesting. We mentioned 2 episodes ago about the idea of leitmotif, and I'm taking a leaf out of what you just said in terms of the symbolism, because I think it's really important for us to remember the symbolism of the bum, right? This thing keeps coming back and it's transformed. We mentioned maybe it's the villain, maybe it's fate, maybe it's something to do with death knocking on the door or something ominous. And yet he brings it back in this last movement as a reminder, hey, don't forget that, amongst the glory and the brilliance of C major, there's this still niggling feeling that there's something ominous still present maybe, or hasn't been fully transformed into this movement. And I like what he said about this transformation of a seemingly insignificant bass line promoted to melodic status until it emerges as a theme of its own. All right, and of course, like you said, it's this symbolism of something insignificant seemingly that becomes like it maybe an idea that seemingly doesn't seem very important, that emerges as a brilliant thing that takes over the world. But it also just adds so much meaning. I really, really love how he talks about it, like Larry, but also how Beethoven is writing this into the music. And it's analyzed at very different levels. I think a casual listener wouldn't think of this sort of symbolism, but as a someone, that's why I say it's a masterclass in composition, because as a composer you could study this and it becomes something.
Oh, absolutely! It's a masterclass in composition. It's also a very engaging and very charming masterclass in listening.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's so much more one can derive and enrich themselves from listening to masterpieces or reading masterpieces in literature, when certain things sort of unfold, like peeling off the onion, and you get more and more out of it, the more you're led by someone like Larry Rapchak through the details of it. You might not even notice where this theme came from.
Yeah.
It's a captivating theme at the top, and it's signifying the glory and the the light coming out of darkness. But where it came from and how Beethoven built that experience of getting there, if you notice it, it's almost like noticing things on a trail. If someone points out, look at this mushroom, look at this light, look at this ray of light, look at this plant or something, the journey becomes filled with events which Beethoven built into the symphony, created from scratch, from nothing. These were his ideas. They were not on the paper there. And getting familiar with those ideas built into the texture of the symphony, of course, makes the whole journey a lot more significant and a lot more enriching, and communicates a lot more.
The final 28 measures of this symphony, all C major, all the time, no doubt about it. Every possible rhythmic permutation of the C major chord from the full orchestra without a single G dominant chord anywhere in sight. Being fascinated as I am by the power and beauty of harmony, I'm automatically disinterested in, for instance, the many, many works that you often find from the early classical era with very rudimentary tonic and dominant harmonies. I'll go into D major here, this sort of thing. There's a lot of this where it's just tonic, dominant, tonic. But Beethoven, through the sheer force of his creative power, could take these same two chords, tonic and dominant, reducing his harmonic plan to the absolute minimum, its most primal, and along with his astounding imagination and technique, the elemental simplicity of these harmonies actually helped him to conceive, design, and construct music of titanic power and grandeur. The blinding force of the Fourth Symphony's introduction, as we saw, entirely sustained on that dominant chord. The inexorable momentum of the Eroica Symphony's first movement coda, built entirely on the tonic and dominant chords. Or in the Eroica's finale, the coda, the boundless driving energy, all built on simple repetitions of tonic and dominant chords. There's a passage in the Credo movement of Beethoven's great Mass in C major, written during the same general period as the Fifth Symphony. The passage depicting Christ's resurrection and ascension. The chorus sings unison on a rising C major triad, the Latin words, sedet ad dexteram Patris. He is seated at the right hand of the Father. Like so. It's all unison in octaves. Sedet ad dexteram, ad dexteram. And on the word patris, Father, the chorus breaks into a full C major chord, the timpani charging ahead, the strings ascending, then they descend. And it all happens on a single C major chord. Beethoven doesn't even need a dominant chord anywhere. The recording we have here is played on original instruments, so the pitch is a bit lower. But still, we are carried aloft by this brief and stunning passage. That's it. That's all. But that single span of music, which emerges from the darkness of the Crucifixus section and ascends into heaven, is a perfect example of the elemental power of Beethoven's art. I sang bass in a chorus of this Mass 50 years ago in April of 1970, and that one brief passage remains one of the most thrilling moments of my performing experience. And around the same time Beethoven wrote this Mass, he applied to the Imperial Court Theater in Vienna for an annual stipend in order that he might continue to compose and survive at the same time. In his petition, he assured the committee that his composing was, as he said, much less to earn his daily bread than it was to raise the taste of the public and to let his own genius, quote, soar to greater heights and even to perfection, unquote. His application was turned down. So Beethoven just soldiered on.
Wow. No, this is a really beautiful production, especially this is the concluding episode. We're talking a lot about what's happening here. What are your thoughts on this final episode? What he's talking about, these ideas of the tonic dominant, this idea that he uses C major for 28 measures and all that.
And of all keys, it is C major, which,
Yes.
plain vanilla kind of key. And Beethoven elevates it to incredible power of pure energy and pure triumph of the energy, of the positive energy. And it's, to me, it's very telling how Lawrence Rapchak finds out those pretty impressive facts of Beethoven's biography that coordinate with what was happening in his life. He was turned down by the source of money for him to continue to do his work. And what does he put out? I like to quote Larry Rapchak on that. He soldiers forward. And I remember when we worked on this film and that ending, there was, of course, a whole bunch of different versions of the visual to illustrate that, and we found that one footage where the person is standing alone and raising the hand, and it was just everyone agreed, yeah, that's how you soldier through on your own journey of creating something as powerful as this, when seemingly you're not being fully supported or not as supported as you want to be.
Well, I also like to reference a bit of what he does musically. This sort of, after you have all these C minor sections of the different movements previously, now we're finally in C major. In the last episode, we talked about how he transitions into C major from the third movement. It's sort of a very seamless way in which he does it, from a creepy, hollow, haunting mood and atmosphere to this joyful and triumphant thing. He uses definitely patriotism and revolutionary elements in order to make this happen. What are your thoughts on all this and how he concludes with this massive C major?
I think he concludes with a call to action. And that's not unlike Beethoven to do that. He's the doer and the energy of the action. His symphonies are, all of his works are so energetic and so grand, on the energy on a grand scale. So this transformation from C minor through all of the other harmonic tools which he uses to show different paths, they're all leading to the same ending, and that ending is a triumph of the energy, and it being not some kind of a dark chord, but being a C major. I think the statement is clear and loud. It's the triumph of the power of goodness and joy and creativity over whatever obstacles happened in the course of the symphony on the path. And Beethoven sometimes really was able to focus single-mindedly on one most important aspect of his characters. And if we think of that symphony as being a portrayal of a character's journey, he's just so articulate and so clear. You start with some fate knocking on your door,
Yeah.
or with obstacles and dangers and challenges, and then you go through them and you find, energy in different harmonic progressions, and different. Sometimes you even venture in maybe in the cemetery, in the scherzo in there, but then you come out of all of that victorious in a glorious C major, where C major leaves no doubt of what he meant. C minor is so condensely energetic and tragic. Key. So that just juxtaposition of the extremes being all around the same C probably is why Beethoven was attracted to this particular combination of keys.
Yeah, you bring a really wonderful point, because sometimes, and especially I want to reference what Larry does, which is by referencing the Beethoven Mass in C major and the Credo. I noticed this also when I heard Fidelio for the first time. You finally are able to put words, or you find words and meaning to the keys that he uses. So depending on the mood, he would actually use a different key for the aria, and you get a little bit more of a sense of what that key really means to him. And so when Larry was saying that after the sort of crucified part of the Credo, to have the Father, the glory of the Father, he really reveals what C major means to him. It's this sort of absolute glory of heaven, and the skies and the heights of it all. This elemental power of Beethoven's eye is just so powerful, and
absolutely,
yes.
Yeah. And this is also very remarkable. I don't think anyone else before Larry actually counted the 28 measures of C major at the end of the symphony. I knew it was long, but I never bothered to count. And 28 measures is a lot, written all in C major. And true, a lot of composers engaged in this dominant tonic, tonic. There's even comic versions of it, like, okay, when is it going to end, kind of thing. But here it just feels like it needs that many measures to fill the bucket, to fill the amount of joy we have at the conclusion of the story being told by that symphony.
Yeah, I think it's no accident. Beethoven wasn't just running out of material, or nor was he just trying to fill space or fill time. He really had intended all this. And even if you see of how he uses this sort of idea within other symphonies, which Larry portrayed, if you look at a lot of the score, there's a lot of underlying rhythmical techniques, or different ways in which he riles up the momentum of these progressions, or just the one chord in itself. It's never just one chord held on for 28 measures. It's a series of different things, different themes it brings back, different rhythmic gestures. It's always filled with some sort of movement.
No matter where you are or who you are, music connects us all. We started with a dream, but now we are paving the future. Welcome to the Sound Expressiva Global Competition. Fully virtual, yet bringing musicians closer together than ever before, now on a global scale. True live, inclusivity, diversity, connection, community, an extraordinary array of judges. Get noticed by companies all over the world. Prizes, scholarships, performance opportunities. Apply to be a part of the most exciting congregation of artists like nothing you've ever seen before. We guarantee quality and leave no musician behind. We can't wait to hear you on the virtual stage.